I never expected my life to detonate the day I finally won. If someone had told me that the moment I achieved the biggest financial miracle of my life would also be the moment my family tried to destroy my future, I would have laughed. Or maybe I would have cried if I'd known how painfully accurate that prediction would become. My name is Elena. I'm 28, and 3 months ago, I won $500,000 in the state lottery. A life-changing amount. The kind of number that makes your chest tighten, your knees weaken, your imagination run wild with possibilities. But I never got to enjoy that moment, because the very same day I told my parents, they tried to take it. Not ask, not borrow, not discuss. Take every dollar. They said the money didn't belong to me. They said it was my duty, my responsibility as the older sister, to fund my little sister Bella's future. Bella, the golden child. Bella, who had never lifted a financial finger for herself. Bella, who once threw a tantrum because her university bathroom tiles felt depressing. And when I said no, when I dared to say I had dreams of my own, the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally looked me in the eye and told me to leave my childhood home immediately. Just like that. One lottery ticket, one refusal, one suitcase on the curb. And suddenly I was no longer a daughter. I was a threat. I remember standing on the driveway, fingers gripping the handle of my luggage so tightly my knuckles turned white. My mother's voice echoed behind the slammed door. If you won't support your sister, then you are no longer welcome here. My parents didn't ask if I had somewhere to go. They didn't check if I had money saved, if I was okay, if I was scared. Their only concern was that Bella might not get her dream life delivered on a silver platter. That day, something inside me cracked. Not loudly, not violently, but with a clean, quiet certainty. If I didn't save myself now, I would never escape their control. And I didn't know it then. But karma had already begun writing a story none of us were prepared for. I wasn't born into a bad family, at least not in the way people imagine when they hear that sentence. There was no violence, no shouting matches, no broken bottles or police lights. In my family, the damage came quietly, softly, like water dripping on stone, slow, steady, unnoticed, until one day the shape of everything had changed. I was 6 years old the first time I realized Bella and I didn't live under the same rules. She was 4, tiny and adorable, with big hazel eyes that made strangers coo at her in grocery stores. Our parents adored her, adored in the kind of way that made the world bend around her comfort. I remember watching her draw on the living room wall with a red crayon. My mother walked in, eyes widening, but instead of scolding, she gasped, "Oh, sweetheart, what a creative mind." The next day, they framed a photograph of the wall and put it beside the family portraits. A week earlier, I had accidentally spilled juice on the carpet. My father made me scrub it for an hour. That contrast became the rhythm of my childhood. When Bella wanted a toy, they bought her 3. When I needed new shoes because mine had holes, I was told they didn't grow money on trees. On my 10th birthday, I received a pack of colored pencils. 2 years later, Bella got a full-scale party complete with pony rides and a custom cake that cost more than my entire birthday history combined. But the worst part wasn't the favoritism, it was the denial of it. Every time I tried to explain how it felt, they would smile gently and say, "Don't be dramatic, Elena. We love you both equally." Except they didn't, not even close. By middle school, I had already learned what my role was. I was the responsible one, the one who hugged Bella through tantrums, the one expected to sacrifice so she could thrive, the one whose accomplishments were overlooked because they made Bella feel insecure. When I made honor roll in high school, my parents barely reacted. When Bella brought home a B+, they took her to a steakhouse to celebrate her hard work. I should have been angry sooner, but children don't question the weather. They adjust to it. By the time I graduated high school, Bella was still the sun my parents orbited around. They gifted her a new car at her graduation. I received a card with $50 in it. I worked multiple part-time jobs just to afford community college. Bella got a fully funded private university education, paid for by my parents emptying their savings and taking out loans. I kept my head down. I swallowed the resentment. I told myself that being the older sister meant being stronger, more patient, more forgiving. But eventually, even patience starts to bruise. Last year, when I finally landed a decent job and moved out, I thought things would change. I imagined distance might soften the imbalance between us. Instead, the opposite happened. My parents immediately began pressuring me to contribute financially to Bella's future wedding. She wasn't even dating anyone. She didn't have a job. She didn't even know how to do her own laundry without calling my mother. Yet somehow, I was expected to start saving for the fantasy wedding of a woman who had never saved a cent for anything. I tried to speak up, gently, carefully, the way trauma teaches you, but the answer was always the same. Family comes first, Elena. Don't be selfish. Selfish. The word followed me my entire life. And then the lottery happened. $500,000. Enough to finally start the small apparel company I'd been dreaming about for years. Children's dresses, whimsical frocks, soft colors, and hand-stitched details. Something I could build from the ground up, finally, for myself. But to my parents, the money wasn't mine. It was Bella's future ticket to an elite graduate program abroad. It was her destiny. And I, once again, was supposed to fund it. They just didn't expect I would finally say no. Not yet knowing that this no would become the turning point of my entire life. The strange thing about conflict is that it rarely begins with explosions. Most of the time, it starts with whispers, small, unsettling shifts that you can't quite name at first. Looking back, the seeds of everything that happened were planted long before the lottery. I just didn't recognize them for what they were. It began with the tone in my parents' voices. Subtle at first, a little too expectant, a little too curious, almost evaluative. Whenever I visited on weekends, my mother would ask, "So, how much are you saving these days?" Or, "Do you have anything put aside for emergencies?" But she wasn't really asking about me. Her eyes would flick to Bella, who lounged on the couch, scrolling through her phone, pretending not to listen. My father wasn't any better. He'd clap me on the shoulder as if he were proud and say, "You know, as the eldest, you'll always have responsibilities. Your sister's future depends on you doing well." I used to laugh it off, thinking it was just their usual favoritism reshaped into adult expectations. But their words started to feel heavier, like they were trying to mold me into some sort of long-term financial plan. Then came the comments from extended family. My aunt once pulled me aside at a barbecue and whispered, "I heard your parents say you're setting money aside for Bella's wedding. That's very generous of you, Elena." I froze. I had never told anyone that, because I had barely agreed to it myself. My parents were bragging about it like it was a trust fund I had willingly created. The pressure grew in ways I didn't expect. One night I overheard my mother on the phone with Bella. "Don't worry, honey. When the time comes, your sister will help pay for everything. She knows how important your milestones are." Your milestones. As if mine didn't exist. Bella, meanwhile, had become more demanding, not less. She'd text me things like, "Can you transfer me $100? I need new shoes for a party. Mom said you could help with my rent this month. Since you're saving for my future wedding, maybe help me try on dresses. I want to feel for my style." There was no pleas, no acknowledgement that I was working 2 jobs at the time, no awareness that her needs were luxuries I couldn't afford for myself. But the worst moment, the one that still sticks to my ribs like cold metal, was a conversation I overheard by accident. I had stopped by the house after work to drop off some documents. I walked in quietly because the door was already unlocked. In the kitchen, my parents and Bella were sitting together, and my mother said in a soft but unmistakable tone, "Once Elena earns enough, we'll be able to send you anywhere you want, Bella. Europe, London, wherever. She's finally doing something useful. Useful. Not successful, not independent, not thriving. Useful. Like a tool. Like a bank account." I remember gripping the doorknob, the metal digging into the palm of my hand to keep myself from walking in and screaming. But I didn't. I swallowed it. Again. Like I'd done all my life. These subtle wounds piled up, turning into something dense and heavy inside my chest. And then, for the first time in my life, I had something my parents didn't expect. A dream big enough to threaten their expectations. My small secret, glowing in the dark. A children's apparel line. Frocks for little girls. Soft, whimsical designs that made me think of the childhood I never had. But every time I tried to share my ideas, my father would wave a dismissive hand. "That's a hobby, Elena. Don't get distracted. Focus on saving for your sister's future." A hobby, my dream, reduced to a side activity. They didn't know it yet, but the day I bought that lottery ticket, fate was about to choose a side. And for the first time, it wouldn't be theirs. It was the day after I told my parents no. The day after I refused to hand over my lottery winnings for Bella's graduate school dreams. The day after I packed my things and walked out of their house for what felt like the last time. I had never been good at standing up for myself, but that day, something shifted. I finally said no, No to the years of manipulation, the years of always being the responsible one, while my sister floated above the rest of us, untouched by the world's weight. When I walked out of that house, I thought I was ready. I thought I could breathe, that I would finally feel free. But no amount of preparation could shield me from what happened next. I didn't think they would call me. I didn't think they would try to guilt trip me into coming back, not after everything I had endured. But that night, just a few hours after I settled into my new apartment, the phone rang. My heart tightened when I saw my mother's name on the caller ID. I debated ignoring it. I had told myself I was done. But something, maybe the same old part of me that had always been desperate for their approval, made me pick up. The second I answered, I heard her voice. But it wasn't the soft, comforting tone I was used to. It was sharp, desperate. "Elena, please listen. It's about Bella." There was a tremble in her voice, but I couldn't tell if it was genuine concern or something else. My stomach sank, bracing for whatever she was going to say. "Bella's been accepted into a graduate program in London," my mother continued. "But it's expensive, Elena. We've already drained our savings, and we still need more. She needs this. She's worked so hard." I felt my pulse quicken. I wanted to interrupt, tell her I couldn't do it, that I had already sacrificed enough, but she kept talking, her words running over each other in a rush. "You know how much this means to her. How can you not help your own sister, after everything we've done for you, for both of you?" Her guilt-tripping tactics were nothing new. It was the same speech I'd heard 100 times in various forms, but something about it felt different this time. The desperation was real. And then, the bombshell. The thing I never expected. The thing that cut deeper than any of her previous demands. "Your sister, she can't go to London unless you help. We've already spoken to the loan officer, Elena. You're the one who has to come through for her. Please." I stood there, silent, the weight of it crushing me. There was no consideration for what I had just gone through. No acknowledgement of my dreams, my sacrifice, or my newfound independence. Just a demand, as if I were nothing but a backup plan for their failures. And then, the final blow. "You're our only hope, Elena. If you can't help her, then I don't know what we're going to do. I don't know if we can ever forgive you." The words echoed in my mind. I don't know if we can ever forgive you. The irony wasn't lost on me. For years, I had been trying to earn their forgiveness, their love, their approval. And now they were holding me hostage with the same guilt, the same tactics they always used to manipulate me. This time, however, something inside me snapped. I wasn't going to be the one they used to fix their broken lives. I wasn't going to give up my future again. I pulled the phone away from my ear, taking deep breaths. This was it. The moment I had feared would come for so long. "I'm sorry, Mom. I can't help you." It was as though the words themselves cut through the air, thick with the tension I'd been avoiding. My mother was silent on the other end. For the first time in years, she was speechless. "I've worked hard for everything I have. I'm not going to give up my dream for Bella's. She has her own path to follow, and so do I." And with that, I hung up. I didn't expect the aftermath to be so deafening. My phone didn't stop ringing. My parents texted me, but I refused to answer. For the first time in my life, I felt something that I had never allowed myself to feel before, a sense of peace. But that peace was short-lived. Less than an hour later, I got a call from Bella. Her voice was different, almost too calm. I wasn't prepared for what she said. "You've really done it now, Elena," she said, her voice cold. "Mom and Dad are devastated. They were counting on you. You just had to be selfish, didn't you? You've ruined everything for us." I stood there, shocked, the words slicing through me. "Ruined everything?" I whispered. "Yes. Because of you, I may not get my chance. How could you do this to me?" Her words rang in my head, a betrayal I wasn't prepared for. I didn't expect her to turn on me. But the more she spoke, the more I realized. I had just given up everything for a family that never cared about my dreams. And now, Bella, my sister, was playing the same game. This was no longer just about money. It was about control. It was about who would sacrifice for whom. And I refused to be that person any longer. I hung up the phone and just stood there in the middle of my new apartment, staring at the walls that were still bare and unfinished. I could hear the hum of traffic outside and the ticking of the clock on the wall, but all I could think about was the conversation with Bella, the way her words wrapped around me like a vice, squeezing out the last remnants of my emotional strength. How could she say that? How could she turn on me so easily? I had always tried to be the good sister, the responsible one, the one who stayed silent when Bella was spoiled, who put up with the favoritism, who smiled and nodded, when I felt like my entire life had been lived in her shadow. I worked hard, I kept my head down, and I never asked for anything. I thought, at least, that my sister and I shared some unspoken bond, that we were family. But now, hearing her accuse me of ruining her future, it was clear to me. She had never seen me as an equal. She had always seen me as someone who would carry the weight of her dreams for her, even if it meant crushing my own in the process. I slumped onto the couch, burying my face in my hands. The anger I'd been holding back for years began to bubble up, mixing with a deep, aching sadness. Why was I always the one expected to give? Why did I have to shoulder all their disappointments, their regrets? Why did it always fall on me to make things right? I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, a chaotic thrum of frustration and helplessness. But even as the tears threatened to spill, there was something else there too, a quiet, growing resolve. This was the breaking point. This was the moment where I had to stop playing the role of the sacrificial lamb. For years, I had thought I wasn't enough. For years, I believed that I was only worthy of love and attention if I kept my head down, if I gave everything to my family without asking for anything in return. But now, in this tiny apartment, standing at the edge of my future, I realized something. I was enough. The weight I had carried for so long was not my burden to bear anymore. I picked up my phone, the screen still showing the recent call from Bella, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel the need to apologize. I didn't need to make excuses or explain myself, but I couldn't bring myself to call her back either. I wasn't ready. Not yet. Instead, I focused on what I could control. I opened my laptop and stared at the design sketches I had been working on for months. The dream I had buried for so long, the dream of creating an apparel company for little girls, was finally within reach. It was more than just a business idea. It was my ticket to freedom, a chance to build something on my own terms, without anyone telling me what I owed them. I took a deep breath and began working. The sound of my fingers tapping away on the keyboard was oddly soothing. The weight in my chest began to lift, even if just a little. I knew there would be consequences for standing my ground. I knew my family would never understand, and that Bella might never forgive me. But what I realized in that quiet moment was this. I had been waiting my entire life for approval that I would never get. I had been chasing a love that could never be earned. And now I had to be okay with walking away from it, because my love for myself, my dreams, my future, was more important than any sacrifice I had made for them. I was tired of being the one who always gave. It was time for me to take back my life, my dreams, and my freedom. I closed the laptop, stood up, and walked over to the window, looking out at the city lights stretching endlessly in front of me. The future felt uncertain, and I was still scared, but there was a quiet strength in knowing that the path ahead, whatever it held, was now mine to choose. No more guilt, no more shame, just me, and the future I was building for myself. And if my parents couldn't understand that, then I was ready to let them go. I had made my decision. I had chosen to put myself first for once, and there was no going back. But choosing that path didn't mean the battle was over. No, in many ways, it only marked the beginning. The first few weeks after I moved out were a strange kind of quiet. There were no calls, no guilt-laden messages. For a while, I thought maybe my parents were processing, maybe they just needed time. And for that time, I allowed myself to breathe, to focus on building my future, on setting up the online store for my business. I found peace in the small things, ordering fabric samples, finalizing designs for my frocks, building a brand from scratch. It was a fresh start. But soon enough, the quiet became deafening. It was my father who reached out first. A week after I had settled into my new place, he left me a voicemail. His voice was softer than I remembered, almost apologetic. But underneath it, there was an unmistakable tone of expectation. Elena, this is your father. I know things have been difficult between us lately, but I think it's time for us to talk. We need to figure this out for the sake of the family. I sat on my bed, staring at the message. Part of me wanted to ignore it. Part of me wanted to delete it and forget they existed. But then another part, one that had been conditioned to always care, compelled me to respond. Not because I wanted to fix things, but because I wanted to assert myself. I was tired of always being the one who was wrong. I was tired of carrying the weight of their expectations. I called him back, and for the first time in years, I didn't back down. The conversation was tense, a slow war of words and silences. My father tried to pull me back in, playing the role of the concerned, loving parent. He reminded me of everything they had sacrificed for me. He mentioned how my mother had barely slept since I left, how Bella was heartbroken over my decision. "Do you really want to break our family apart, Elena?" he asked. The question made my blood run cold. I thought about all the times I had sacrificed my happiness, my dreams, for their version of family harmony. I thought about how my existence had always been seen as secondary to Bella's needs, how I had spent my entire life trying to earn their love. But in that moment, I realized something crucial. Family wasn't supposed to break you. It wasn't supposed to make you feel invisible, unworthy, like an afterthought in your own story. "I'm not breaking the family," I said, keeping my voice calm. "But I can't keep sacrificing my happiness for you, for Bella. I'm allowed to have a future too." My father fell silent on the other end. I could almost hear him wrestling with the words he wanted to say but couldn't. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he muttered, "You'll regret this, Elena. You're making a mistake." I could hear the sadness in his voice, but beneath it, I knew the real truth. He was angry. Angry that I had dared to choose myself. Angry that I had turned my back on their expectations. The next day, Bella texted me. I didn't even need to read the message. I knew what it was going to say before I opened it. She always had a way of using guilt as a weapon, and this time, she was no different. "Elena, why are you doing this? You're ruining everything. Mom and Dad are beside themselves. I thought we were family." I could feel my chest tighten as I read the words. Part of me wanted to throw my phone across the room. How could she do this to me? How could she twist everything around and make it sound like I was the one who had betrayed them? I wasn't the one who had lived a life of privilege. I wasn't the one who had always had everything handed to me. But in Bella's eyes, I had always been the bad one, the one who wasn't good enough. I didn't respond immediately. I couldn't. I needed time to process. I needed time to keep holding my ground. But Bella didn't stop. She kept texting. She sent screenshots of conversations with our parents, telling me how devastated they were. She sent me pictures of the grand plans they had for her future, plans they expected me to fund. She was doing everything she could to make me feel small, guilty, like I owed her this. I sat there, staring at the screen, feeling the weight of all the years of manipulation crashing down on me. But then something inside me clicked. This wasn't my fight anymore. I deleted her messages. I blocked her number. That was the hardest thing I had ever done. I had spent so many years trying to keep the peace, trying to fix everything for my family, that I didn't know what it felt like to finally let go. But now I did. The calls didn't stop coming. My parents, Bella, distant relatives, they all reached out, but I remained firm. Each time, I repeated the same thing. "I can't be the person you want me to be anymore. I'm sorry, but I need to live my life." For the first time in my life, I wasn't apologizing. For the first time, I was standing up for myself. And it felt like a strange mix of freedom and terror. As the days turned into weeks, the pressure from my family didn't ease. They tried everything: guilt, threats, manipulation, but nothing worked. I refused to let them pull me back in. And with each passing day, I could feel myself becoming stronger, more confident, more determined to carve out a future where I was the one in control. The more they pushed, the more I realized something. This was their way of trying to keep me small. They were scared of me taking control of my own life, of me choosing a future that didn't revolve around them. But what they didn't understand was that I wasn't afraid anymore. There's a strange kind of silence that settles in when you finally stop running from the truth. Not a peaceful silence, not a comforting one, but a heavy, suffocating stillness, the kind you feel in your chest, in your bones, in the space between heartbeats. That's what the third month felt like. The texts had stopped. The calls had dried up. My parents had gone from demanding to angry to silent, the kind of silence that feels like a punishment. And Bella, well, Bella made her stance clear when she unfollowed me on every social media platform, blocked me everywhere, then had a mutual cousin message me. Bella says she doesn't have a sister anymore. It shouldn't have broken me. She had said worse, but somehow that message, that cold, dismissive sentence, felt like someone pressing their thumb into an old bruise until it bled. The apartment felt colder after that. The walls felt closer, the air heavier. I didn't cry at first. I worked. I designed. I told myself I was fine, that this was what I needed. But the truth was, the loneliness was louder than I expected. It echoed in small moments, when I brewed coffee in the morning and instinctively made 2 cups before realizing there was no one to share them with. when I reached for my phone to text Bella about something funny that happened and remembered she wasn't there anymore, when I walked through the grocery store aisles and saw a brand of cereal we used to fight over as kids. Grief is cruel like that. It hides in the mundane. One night, after a long day sketching designs for my first collection, I sat on the kitchen floor with my back against the cabinets and finally allowed myself to fall apart. The tears came violently, not like a slow drip, but like a dam breaking. Years of being pushed aside, years of feeling invisible, years of being the dependable one, the responsible one, the forgotten one. All of it poured out of me until my vision blurred and my chest ached. What if I am selfish? The words slipped out before I even realized I'd said them. It was my deepest fear, a fear planted by my parents, watered by Bella, nurtured by years of being told my needs were secondary. What if they were right? What if choosing myself meant I was cold, ungrateful, unloving? I pulled my knees to my chest, my arms wrapped tightly around myself as though I could hold the broken pieces together. What if I really don't deserve to be loved unless I give everything away? That thought scared me more than anything else, because buried inside it was the truth I had been avoiding. I didn't know who I was without my family's approval. I didn't know how to love myself without sacrificing parts of myself in the process. Eventually, I dragged myself to bed, emotionally exhausted, but sleep didn't come easily. I tossed and turned, haunted by memories, some good, many painful. I remembered Bella's face the day she got her new car. I remembered how my parents praised her for every small step while dismissing my biggest accomplishments. I remembered birthday parties, school events, family dinners, all moments where I was present but never seen. And beneath all the pain was a single devastating truth. I had spent my entire life waiting for people who were never going to show up for me. That realization hit me harder than I expected. It wasn't anger, it wasn't bitterness. It was grief. Raw, unfiltered grief for a version of my family that had never existed. By morning, my eyes were swollen, my body heavy, my heart bruised. But something else had shifted too. A small, quiet clarity. I couldn't keep living my life hoping the people who hurt me would suddenly become the people I needed. I couldn't keep sacrificing my dreams, my happiness, my identity, just to earn scraps of affection. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, my reflection tired and blotchy, but honest in a way I hadn't seen before. "This is your life, Elena," I whispered, "and you're allowed to build it without them." It wasn't a roar of empowerment. It wasn't a cinematic transformation. It was a whisper, a beginning, a fragile truth that would eventually, slowly grow into strength. But that moment, that quiet, broken, necessary moment, was the real turning point. The darkness didn't disappear after that, but for the first time, I was willing to walk through it, not around it. The shift didn't happen all at once. It wasn't some dramatic epiphany where I suddenly stood taller or breathed deeper or felt whole again. It happened quietly, like a slow sunrise spreading across a dark horizon, gradual, soft, but unmistakably there. It started with a message, not from my mother, not from my father, definitely not from Bella. It came from someone unexpected, Mrs. Alden, my old high school art teacher. She had seen the sketches I posted on my small business page and wrote, "Elena, you always had a remarkable eye for design. I'm glad to see you pursuing something that finally reflects your talent. I hope you know none of this was ever your fault. Some families fail to recognize what they have until it's too late." I stared at the message for a long time, the words sinking beneath my ribs like warm light. She had no reason to reach out, no hidden agenda, no manipulation, just truth, simple, clear, and deeply validating. It wasn't my fault. For years, I had carried their shadows like a weight strapped to my back. Years of blaming myself for not being enough, not being perfect, not being Bella. But Mrs. Alden's message cracked something open, not in a painful way, in a way that finally let light in. That same week, something else happened, something that changed everything. I received the final approval for the business license I had applied for months earlier. It felt surreal seeing my name attached to something that was wholly mine. Elena Grace, founder and creative director. Little Ember Boutique, a business, a real, official business. I held the approval letter in my hands, and a slow, steady warmth spread through me. Not excitement, something deeper, pride. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just existing for someone else. I was building something for me. And then came the moment that truly cemented the turning point. I sat at my desk, organizing fabric samples and reviewing quotes from manufacturers, when my parents called again. I didn't want to answer. Everything inside me told me not to. But I did, this time without fear. My father's voice was tight, strained. "Elena," he said, "your mother and I want to talk." Bella. She received an acceptance letter from her dream program. "We're proud of her, but we don't have enough money. We were hoping, maybe now that you've settled, you could reconsider." Reconsider, as if my dreams were optional, as if my no was temporary, as if my worth existed solely in what I could provide for someone else. I took a slow breath. This moment, this exact moment, was where the old Elena would have broken, where I would have folded, apologized, offered everything I had just to ease the tension. But the new Elena didn't waver. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice steady. "I can't give you that money. It's not up for discussion." His inhale was sharp. "Elena, your sister's future is her responsibility," I cut in gently, "not mine." There was a long silence, a heavy, disbelieving one. If he had been standing in front of me, I knew he would have looked at me as if he were seeing a stranger. My mother's voice entered the call then, soft but trembling. "Elena, sweetheart, you're being cruel. This will change Bella's life." "I know," I replied, "and so will this business change mine." The silence that followed was cold, but for once, it didn't pierce me. It didn't make me question myself. It confirmed something instead. I finally had power. Not power over them, power over myself. Power to say no, power to choose my life, power to walk away. My father exhaled sharply. "Then there's nothing more to discuss." There wasn't. We both knew it. I hung up, but this time there was no shaking hands, no trembling breath, only clarity. I wasn't destroying my family. I was releasing myself from a role I never asked for. 2 days later, something unexpected happened. A complete stranger, a mother who followed my small business page, left a review on one of my early designs, calling it delicate, thoughtful, and created with genuine love. Those words hit me harder than any insult Bella had ever thrown at me. Because it was true. There was love in my work. There was passion. There was me. All the parts of me my family never cared to notice. Suddenly, I felt something inside me settle, a deep, grounding certainty that the path I was on wasn't just good, it was right. I looked at the half-finished dress hanging on my mannequin, a tiny frock with hand-stitched flowers along the hem, and whispered, "This is my future. Not Bella's, not my parents', mine." And for the first time, the idea didn't terrify me. It thrilled me. Fallout doesn't arrive with explosions. Sometimes it comes in a single unexpected phone call, one that forces the entire past to confront you, whether you're ready or not. It had been months since I spoke to my parents. Months since I drew any boundaries. Months since I finally allowed myself to breathe. Little Ember Boutique was flourishing. Orders trickled in at first, then poured in. Within weeks, repeat customers appeared. Within months, parenting blogs began featuring my designs. I had stitched my heart into every tiny dress, every embroidered hem, and now little girls across the country were twirling in something I made with my own hands. I should have known success wouldn't go unnoticed for long. It was a Wednesday afternoon when my phone rang, with a number I hadn't seen in months, my parents' home phone. I almost didn't answer, but something in me, curiosity, instinct, habit, made my thumb slide across the screen. My mother's voice was shaking. "Elena, it's Bella. She's in trouble." My stomach dropped. She wasn't crying. Not really. It was the same controlled panic she used when situations exceeded her ability to manipulate them. "What happened?" I asked, my fingers tightening around the phone. There was a pause, followed by a soft, humiliating truth. "She was arrested." I felt the words slam into me. Arrested. Bella! The golden child. The one who could do no wrong. The one for whom the world was supposed to bend. "What for?" My voice was steady. She didn't deserve for me to fall apart. My mother inhaled shakily. She was caught stealing from the boutique she worked at. Money from the register." A beat. "She's been doing it for a while." My father came on the line then, his voice quieter, defeated in a way I had never heard before. "We don't have enough for bail. Or a lawyer. Elena, please. We don't know what else to do." For a moment I said nothing. I let their words settle. I let my thoughts catch up with reality. Bella. The sister who had called me selfish. Bella. The sister who told people I wasn't part of her life. Bella. The sister who never paid for anything in her 22 years of existence. She had been given everything except consequences. And now the consequences had finally arrived. But consequences didn't erase danger. They didn't erase fear. Bella was still my sister. I closed my eyes. I wasn't the same girl who always bent, always broke herself to fix others. But I also wasn't someone who could ignore a young woman alone in a jail cell. "I'll help with bail," I said quietly, "but I won't give you money directly. I'll transfer it to the bail bondsman, and this is the last time. I'm not opening my wallet again for any of you." There was stunned silence. My mother whispered, "Thank you, Elena." But the words sounded strange on her tongue. Too new, too unfamiliar. I hung up, and for the first time in years, my hands weren't shaking after talking to them. Bella was released the next day, not because of my parents, not because of some miracle. Because I, Elena, the forgettable daughter, the backup plan, the one useful only when needed, had chosen to act out of humanity, not obligation. 2 days later, my parents called again. But this time their voices were different, humbled, stripped, like the world they had built around Bella had finally cracked. My father cleared his throat. "Elena, we owe you an apology, for more than just this, for a lot of things." Those words, coming from him, were surreal. He wasn't a man who admitted failure. He wasn't someone who acknowledged pain. "We didn't treat you the way you deserved," he continued. "We thought we were helping Bella. We didn't realize we were hurting you." My mother cried softly in the background. I didn't interrupt. I didn't speak to comfort them. For once, I let them feel their own discomfort. When they finally asked me to come home, to stay with them, to let things go back to normal, I exhaled slowly. "I appreciate the apology," I said, "but I'm not coming back. I like my life. I like the person I'm becoming. We can rebuild slowly, outside of the old house, not inside it." There was a long pause. Then, surprisingly, "We understand." And maybe they did. Maybe life had finally forced them to see the daughter they'd ignored. Over the next month, something strange happened. We ate dinner together, once, then twice, then again. It wasn't perfect. It was awkward, clumsy, full of pauses and stumbles. But it was real. And not once did they ask me for more money. As for Bella, she didn't apologize, not directly, but the arrogance was gone from her voice the one time we spoke. The entitlement had cracked. Consequences had carved something new in her. She was facing real charges, a real lawyer, a real future she could no longer hide behind excuses or my parents' worship. That was her fallout. Mine was freedom. For the first time, the story wasn't about what I owed them. It was about what I owed myself. And I was finally paying that debt, with peace. In the end, my story didn't explode into some dramatic reunion or a miraculous change of heart from my family. Real life isn't a movie. Healing rarely arrives wrapped in fireworks. Instead, mine came quietly, through small steps, soft boundaries, and learning how to breathe again without guilt sitting on my chest. Little Ember Boutique grew from a tiny online shop into something that felt alive. Children twirled in dresses I created. Mothers sent me photos of their daughters smiling so brightly it made my heart ache in the best way. Every stitch, every design, every long night spent sewing turned into a reminder. This life is mine, and I built it. My relationship with my parents didn't transform overnight, but it began to unfold in a way that felt healthier. Our dinners were cautious but honest. Their questions became gentler, and for the first time they seemed to see me, not the daughter who should always sacrifice, but a woman with dreams, talent, and her own place in the world. Bella's journey was harder. It had to be. But even she began to understand that real growth doesn't come from being handed everything. It comes from finally standing on your own feet, shaky as they may be. As for me, I learned the lesson I should have been taught as a child. Choosing yourself is not selfish, it's survival. For years, I believed love was something earned by giving parts of myself away. I believed that family meant carrying burdens that weren't mine. I believed that saying no made me cruel. But now I know the truth. You don't owe your future to people who refuse to value it. You don't have to set yourself on fire to keep anyone warm. You are allowed to build a life that protects your peace, honors your dreams, and celebrates who you are, not who others want you to be. I'm not the same Elena who cried on the kitchen floor months ago. I'm not the daughter who accepted scraps of affection. I'm not the sister who sacrificed her life so someone else could shine. I'm someone new, someone whole, someone finally free. And if my story means anything to anyone watching, I hope it reminds you that walking away from what hurts you is not the end. Sometimes it's the beginning.